came to Italy, moved into Dickie's house. He just wouldn't go away.
You like art, Tom? You're in the right place.
You like art, Tom? Well, you're in the right place.
Tom Ripley, a grifter scraping by in early 1960s New York, is hired by a wealthy man to travel to Italy to try to convince his vagabond son to return home. Tom's acceptance of the job is the first step into a complex life of deceit, fraud, and murder. Andrew Scott and Dakota Fanning join me now to talk about this gripping psychological thriller.
Hi, Morgan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Congratulations on this series. Andrew, this is a story that has held a fascination for many filmmakers. We've seen that with the acclaimed films Purple Noon and, of course, the talented Mr. Ripley. What is it about Tom Ripley that makes him such an iconic character?
Well, I don't think we ever get, our questions about him never get satiated, you know? And it's really interesting kind of talking about the character as well. I feel sort of a bit like that the character is secretive. I suppose there are certain little internal decisions that I have made that I suppose I feel a bit secretive about or protective of him about.
True.
You think you sort of feel a bit like, because to diagnose the character too much is to ruin the character. And so much of the people that we find frightening or terrifying or even interesting or even alluring are because we don't know. We have so many questions. We don't. Yeah. So for it to go, well, this is what he is and this is what it is and here it is and blah, blah, blah. And so that's actually the challenge for all of us, to capture these characters, not just Tom, but all the characters who are sort of
Everyone's
ambiguous.
slippery in their own way.
Right.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Andrew, you're coming off such a great year with the success of All of Us Strangers. What's it like getting into the head of someone who does some pretty bad things?
Well, you know what, a lot of the bad things, you know, if you think about it, when I think about the actual filming, the bad things, we shot for the guts of a year, and the bad things probably took 2 weeks.
Right.
And the rest of it actually is quite domestic stuff and somebody who's trying to survive. And then you'd go, oh yeah, I have to do this sort of murder. plot, you know, spoiler alert. You know, so actually, I never really think of him, which is maybe perverse, but I suppose I have to be the only person who doesn't think of him like that, like doesn't judge him, because I have to inhabit him. And I don't think people go, well, I don't describe myself as a non-murderer, and I don't think Tom would describe himself as a murderer or a psychopath or a sociopath or, you know, whatever.
Without those circumstances, he wouldn't do
exactly,
that.
He wouldn't do it. Exactly. He's not bloodthirsty. He's not like, it's like, oh God, this is a compulsion, that an instinct that happens, and he sort of hurtles away from that moment ever since.
Okay, so the question is, Dakota, who do you think is scarier, Tom Ripley or your character Jane in the Twilight series?
Oh. I don't know. Not sure.
I'm just saying, she's terrifying. Dakota, we got to see Marge played by Gwyneth Paltrow in the earlier film. So how do you think your Marge differs from that version?
Well, I'm a massive fan of that film and always have been, but it was very clear to us from the beginning, and Steve Zalian, who wrote and directed this, was, you know, very set on that we were, you know, adapting Patricia Highsmith's novel and taking 8 hours to really do a deep dive, and that it was a very separate incarnation of the story from any of the previous adaptations, not just that particular film. So I really didn't think about it, you know. I feel like this was something that was its own thing, and I think that becomes quite clear to the viewer right off the bat. I mean, even just the way that it looks in a trailer. I mean, it's in black and white. It's not the Italy that you might recognize right off the bat. It has just a different tone.
Did you like the black and white when you watched the series back?
Oh, I can't even imagine it in color now. I mean, I knew it was going to be in black and white, that was Steve's intention, and now I just think the color would be distracting or something. You know, it would kind of it needs to be this way. And I've never been in anything in black and white, so I was excited by that too.
Me either. I think that's what's so cool, and I think the black and white is one thing, but I think it goes really hand in hand with the pacing of the thing, which isn't obviously immediately apparent. In the sense that we're trying to we're trying to go back into a world. We're trying to go back into the very early '60s, and actually the pacing of the show. I think Steve has done a really excellent job in teaching the audience how to watch this, because the pacing is sometimes really, really fast, and sometimes it takes its time. And that's a very unusual way of watching television now. I think it's very unique, the pacing of it, in this current age of TikTok and getting everything going fast. And that doesn't mean that it's not a page turner, but sometimes, like when we're reading a novel, we want to luxuriate in the description of an atmosphere for a little while before we get into it, and that's a great pleasure for an audience. So I really admire the courage of that, and I think I don't think the pacing and the black and white are kind of separate from each other. Do you know what I mean? It's all just to create this atmosphere of what it might have been like in 1961.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I really, really enjoyed this series. It was so nice talking to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And you can catch Ripley now streaming on Netflix.